Welcome, everyone. I'm Aldo Gandia. This is a special presentation of our upcoming opponent, our being Chicago Bears' upcoming opponent. We usually do this during the Buffon 55 show, but because he's taking the week off and I didn't want to do a video, I called my good friend Arif Hasan, and he's here to talk Chicago Bears with me. Arif, let me put you up on the screen. There you are. There you are.
Hey.
That's a better shot there. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
We talked before the show. I've had some health challenges, and you've had yours too with COVID just recently. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. This last week was pretty tough, but I'm certainly on the upswing. So, certainly, good enough to talk and talk loudly and use all my lung capacity. So, I'm in a better spot than I think a lot of people are. I'm happy for that.
Well, and I got to tell you, you just started a new venture over at Substack. Let me put that up on the screen and tell people what you're doing over there.
Yeah, so like you can see, it's the Wide Left Post or Wide Left Substack. There I talk obviously primarily about the Vikings, but the NFL at large. And then over the years, people have been kind of interested. I used to have a career in politics and in collegiate debate. So people have been interested about my takes, kind of related to politics. And so whenever the sports world intersects with politics, I try to talk about that. Sometimes when a political issue is so overwhelming, I try to talk about that and put that up there. So all of my thoughts kind of contained there, kind of who I am as a person, kind of encapsulated football, politics, social issues, all over there at the Wide Left Post.
I love it. I read your article on the Mideast conflict that's going on now, and I learned a lot, and it was balanced, fair reporting. I hate to use the Fox News slogan here, but it really was fair reporting, and I really enjoyed it. And so I urge all fans of sports to, you don't even have to be a Vikings fan. There's just tons of great writing, and there's a film room too. You've got somebody doing tape analysis too, right?
Yeah. I just recently asked a friend of mine, Luke Braun, to contribute some of his film room takes. He's putting them out for free on Twitter, and I haven't, asked him to stop doing that. But I figure, one of us might as well, make a little bit of a scratch off of that. And it's really good stuff. So we've got stuff breaking down the undrafted linebacker Ivan Pace. We got stuff breaking down kind of the receiver that just came off of IR, Jalen Naylor. He's supposed to be kind of wide receiver 3 while Justin Jefferson's out. He only got one target, when he came back. We wanted to talk about that a little bit, why that was. So a bunch of really great stuff. And what's really cool is that you learn a lot about not just, the player that he's breaking down, but the offense and the defense and kind of how a quarterback's progression works, or how, a blitz heavy system like Brian Flores is supposed to work, and how that kind of changes the texture of what you're looking at. So there's a lot, I think, that can be gained from, taking a look at that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of people here at the Barroom, visitors who just love to analyze tape and look at tape being analyzed. So I hope they find their way over to wideleftpost.substack.com. All right, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings, the upcoming opponent for the Chicago Bears. Hey, Toreen. Hey, Plank. Hey, King Buka World. Hey, Mike Withrow. Everyone in the chat room. Chris Watts. Send us your questions, and I'll see if Arif can get to them before we're done here. But I do want to talk about this Vikings team right now. Over their last 6 games, they are 5-1. Their win streak started against the Bears in that horrible defeat for Chicago Bears fans at Soldier Field. They went on and looked super impressive against the San Francisco 49ers, beat the Packers, the Falcons, the Saints, before losing on a nationally televised game against the Broncos 21-20. First of all, how does this team become 5-1 after losing their first 4 games or something like that? What's the key to their recent success?
Yeah, it's really nuts. I mean, I think that the truth of it is the Vikings aren't as good as a 5-1 record would suggest, but they weren't nearly as bad as an 0-4 record would suggest. So, you kind of had bad luck going in one direction for the first couple of games, good luck going in another direction for the next couple of games. Really, really difficult team to break down. I mean, if you take a look at that 5-game winning streak, I think there's only one game where both teams had the starting quarterback that they went into the game planning to have, right? I think that was the 49ers game. And so that is just a really difficult team to kind of figure out what's real, what's not. Obviously that Bears game, they had Tyson Bagent come in partway through. It is a really kind of weird thread to kind of pull apart. But I mean, the Vikings defense has gotten a lot better since that losing streak, or actually even since week 3. They've had one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL those first 2 weeks. Obviously, that defense was just not put together. It wasn't very good. But they have led the league in explosive play percentage, which is to say they're the lowest percentage of plays where they've given up explosives, which is crazy because they're also the most blitz-heavy defense in the NFL. In fact, I think the heaviest blitz game that we've had this year was the Vikings against the Bears, right? And so, and part of that, obviously, a rookie quarterback comes in, you blitz the heck out of him just to see kind of if he can handle it. But yeah, I mean, they had like a 95% blitz rate against Tyson Bagent, 85% of that game overall. Never seen that in my life. That's crazy. That's Wink Martindale type stuff. And that defense has buoyed an up and down offensive performance. Some days that offense looks really good. Some days it doesn't. Obviously, without Justin Jefferson, things have been a little bit complicated. But because somebody like Joshua Dobbs can take advantage of how good that offensive line is, and it's genuinely good. It's been a long time since a Vikings fan can say that their offensive line is very good. He's been able to take advantage of it. He has one of the longest times to pressure in the NFL. He likes to hold on to the ball. At least he did in a Vikings uniform, not so much a Cardinals uniform, and create and make plays. And he's got a ton of contact balance, a ton of core strength. It allows him to avoid sacks, avoid tackles. And when his first and second read isn't there, I mean, typically, in Arizona and Cleveland, we saw him get to his third, fourth read. He doesn't know the offense well enough to get to his third, fourth read. So he's using his legs as a check down, and it's creating an offensive floor. So they have the ability to kind of consistently move the ball on offense while that defense has been playing lights out. It is astounding to me how well that defense could play without, frankly, very good in my eyes, personnel.
Interesting. Okay, so we'll talk about the defense momentarily. Let me start talking with you about the offense. And of course, Joshua Dobbs is a huge story this season. He's played in 3 games, 2 as a starter. He's thrown 63 completions on 96 attempts. Yards per attempt is 6.7, and he's thrown for 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. Chris Watts has a question. He says, what about this Dobbs guy? Is he going to continue to play as well as he has?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? I don't think a ton of Vikings fans know the answer to that. Vikings analysts are trying to figure it out. Personally, I think it's pretty unlikely. I think that we saw a bunch of magic in those first 2 games. One is a backup coming in, and one obviously is a starter. And then, the Denver game, we saw a little bit of it go away. I'm not going to say he played poorly against Denver, but obviously he didn't play, the same level that he did in the prior couple of games. And he has benefited from a fair amount of luck. A couple of dropped interceptions here and there, that helps. The Vikings got better at recovering fumbles at the same time he was the quarterback. That's not because of him or anything like that. That's just something that kind of helps the team out. But also, he had some of his best plays in the highest leverage situations, which is really good to see. But it is also very difficult to repeat. And Vikings fans are familiar with that with like Case Keenum, right? Where, hey, man, these magical plays that are occurring on third down, a bunch of pressure coming in, shedding 2-3 tacklers in the backfield to avoid the sack, and then getting a 30-yard run. I mean, that is astounding stuff. That's not stuff that, it's stuff you'll remember for a long time. It's not stuff you can rely on going forward. You need a solid foundation. And like you said, 6.7 yards per attempt. That's not wonderful passing numbers. It's not, disqualifying or anything like that, but it's not wonderful. But the hope is as he becomes more familiar with the offense, as he becomes more familiar with the receivers and what they like and don't like, because his ball placement hasn't been wonderful or anything like that, that will go up while the reliance on these third down scrambles will kind of go down. So there's been a little bit of magic. I don't know that magic can kind of sustain itself, but it's difficult to argue that this guy doesn't pick up things really quickly. Obviously he does. Doesn't have a good sense of what's happening on the field. Obviously he does. He just kind of needs to make sure that everything gets put together because there's a lot of potential there. And it's weird to say that about a 7-year veteran, a guy who's already had 2 chances, as a starter. But, Kevin O'Connell is a remarkable offensive coach. I think we've seen that. And he's a really good coach to pair together with somebody like Dobbs, who I think he can kind of bring the most out of somebody. So I don't think that Dobbs will continue to play at this remarkably high level, but if the defense continues to be a top 5 defense and he plays like a 10 to 15-ish quarterback, which I think is certainly possible, then the Vikings are a legitimate threat, especially in the NFC, where the top, aside from the Eagles and the 49ers, just kind of isn't always there.
The rushing game has improved since Dobbs entered the starting lineup. They for the season they're averaging 93.8 yards per game, but over the last 3 games, 148.7 games, and that's Alexander Madison, Cam Akers, and Ty Chandler, the 3 main running backs. Overall, what can you tell us about this rushing attack for the Vikings?
Yeah, it is a difficult one to figure out because Alexander Madison, before Dobbs showed up, was averaging a little bit under 3.5 yards an attempt. Cam Akers recently suffered an Achilles injury, so we're not going to be seeing him for the rest of the season, but he was the second back. And he'd done all right. He was kind of more of an explosive guy. And so there's some games where it would look a lot better because he put together like 2 20-yard runs along with a bunch of 1-2-yard runs. And Ty Chandler is kind of the young guy that they got from North Carolina. It seems like the Vikings don't trust Ty Chandler a lot. I think it's a pass protection thing because certainly his vision does seem to be there. He is a little bit more reliant on outside runs than inside runs. That might be another reason that they brought in multiple backs ahead of Ty Chandler when the season started. First Myles Gaskin and then Cam Akers. And it seemed like they didn't really want to play Chandler all that much, but when he's on the field, he certainly looks a lot more electric than Madison does. And it helps that Denver's run defense was fairly soft. I don't know that that's going to kind of continue going forward. But, Madison has been playing a lot better with Dobbs on the field. I think that that's true. And he's been able to string together a little bit more in terms of explosives. The run blocking has been good all year. The running back situation has been kind of a concern or a question mark. I know a lot of the analytics guys say running backs don't matter. And for the most part, I think that they're right when you get to the NFL level. But here the Vikings are kind of debating between guys who I don't think are starting level running backs. And then that really does kind of matter even when the blocking is good, you're not always going to get it. So they are a little bit reliant on either a quarterback who's a running threat to kind of open things up themselves, or they've just had kind of a good string of games together where the running backs have done all right. Because still down to down, Alexander Madison will still get you a lot of 2-yard runs, and it can get kind of frustrating. But they have gotten a couple more explosives the past couple of games. And, without Cam Akers, we don't know if that's going to continue, but hopefully, at least hopefully from a Vikings fan's perspective, we'll continue to kind of see that, especially as they continue to dose those outside runs that have been lacking early in the season.
The Bears, statistically, in most run defense categories, are top 5. So it's going to be an interesting matchup and see if the Vikings can unlock that running game against the Bears. Over in the receiving area, we've got the team averages 266 yards passing per game over the last 3 games when Dobbs has taken over. It's reduced down to 230. TJ Hawkinson right now is the team's leading receiver with 736 yards. Jordan Addison had a so-so, not too good game against Denver. And then KJ Osborne rounds out the top 3 that are active for today's game. Justin Jefferson looks like he is going to be inactive. Have you heard anything new on that, Arif?
Yeah. This morning, it was confirmed. I think Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune initially had the report that Jefferson will not be playing. So we can basically confirm that that's the case. The Vikings been extremely cautious about him, which makes sense. Obviously, that this is a guy that they want to keep around long term, and so reactivation of an injury or something like that is something that they're very worried about, and that's the priority. Without Jefferson, I've been pleasantly surprised. This is not a receiving core that I regarded as particularly deep. I didn't know how good Jordan Addison was going to be. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson was kind of the lone bright spot, and he's been, I would say, up and down. I know his raw totals look fantastic, but there's been a lot of situations where you ask him to, play, like make top 3 type tight end plays, right? Which is, the level he's paid. I think once you adjust for the cap, he's paid like a 5th, 6th best tight end in the NFL, which is fair. And you ask him to make a bunch of tough catches, and sometimes he will, and sometimes he won't. And it's just kind of below that level that you're looking for. But it's also hard to complain about because he's getting a ton of yards for a tight end, right? And so you're just like, okay, well, I mean, okay, I'll take it. But man, I just a little bit more would be kind of nice. And it created some of the problems early in the season where his drops turned into interceptions on otherwise accurate passes and stuff like that. But without Justin Jefferson, he has carried an enormous load. And I think that he has kind of justified his contract, at least early on in this contract, through that, because it's been difficult to rely on a rookie. I mean, Jordan Addison has been playing very, very good as a rookie. Obviously players like Puka Nacua and Tank Dell are overwhelming this rookie receiver conversation, and fair enough, they're playing better. But, you get to the Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison tier. I mean, this is really good stuff, even for a first-round pick. He's one of the leaders among, I think, all receivers in touchdowns, certainly among rookie receivers in touchdowns. And he's kind of a big play waiting to happen. And the Vikings have been using him like that. They wanted to use him primarily as a big play threat this year. He's had to play a more versatile role with Justin Jefferson out. And I'm not going to say like against Denver, he didn't live entirely up to that call, but for the most part, I would say that he has. And so that's been a pretty good group. They missed KJ Osborne for a couple of games because of a concussion, which, that overlapped with a bunch of the Justin Jefferson stuff. So that made it pretty difficult, but he's back. He's somebody that they trust a lot as a willing blocker, a guy that they love in the slot, and somebody who just kind of knows the entire offense. And they're probably going to rely on him a lot, but I think a lot of it's going to be Hawkinson with plays here and there from Jordan Addison, and then you'll get plays to KJ Osborne, plays to Jalen Naylor, plays to some of the other receivers that they have available to them. A couple of weeks ago, it was like Christian Jackson, the guy that they called up from the practice squad to make some critical plays. So it's going to be those two primarily without Jefferson on the field, and then from there they'll kind of just sprinkle out these targets to whoever.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the offensive line earlier when we were talking about the running attack. Regarding their play in the passing game, they've allowed 2.3 sacks per game on average. Here are their projected 5 starters for tonight. As you look over that list of starters, are there any changes expected for tonight? And can you talk overall about their play?
Yeah, from what I can tell, that list of starters with Darrison O'Neal at tackle, Reisner and Ingram at guard, and Bradbury at center, that should be the group that we see out there. I've had my concerns about all of these interior guys at different points. I think Ed Ingram, for example, had a really bad year last year, didn't start the year out great this year. Dalton Reisner's basically a recent addition. He signed a couple of weeks ago and then took over the starting job after Ezra Cleveland got hurt. Ezra Cleveland got traded for basically change, like a 6th, 7th round swap, something like that. And he's been kind of up and down. His first game was great. Second game was not so great. Third game kind of in the middle, if you will. He clearly, to me, he's not as athletic as the other 4 offensive linemen. And so that kind of limits what they can do in the run game, but he's powerful. So that helps. And then Garrett Bradbury is a really interesting center to watch because he's maybe one of the best athletic zone blocking centers. And he's really great at these insane, impossible reach blocks and walling off these 340-pound nose tackles on these wide zones. And then he'll just get bowled over in pass protection in one-on-one against the nose tackle. And so you try and figure out kind of how much is this worth it, whatever. He's gotten a little bit better at that over the past year and a half, which has been nice to see. But overall, the aggregate performance, especially with 2, in my opinion, elite tackles, I think Darrisaw is the number 1 PFF tackle, and I think Brian O'Neill is like top 5 among right tackles. I mean, it's a really great set of bookends. They've been doing a really fantastic job of creating additional time and neutralizing, for the most part, most opponents' most dangerous rushers, even, when you're up against some pretty high level players. So that offensive line group has been really, really great in pass protection. And like I said, they've been very good in run blocking. We just haven't seen it throughout the year in terms of the rushing numbers. But you break down the film, you take a look at play by play, whose job is what they need to do, and the offensive line is doing their job. I just think that, I mean, I'm not used to praising a Vikings offensive line. It's been catastrophically bad over the years, right?
It has.
Yeah. Like, I think since 2009, it's like the Favre year, and it's like, hey, you got Hutch, you got some great offensive linemen, and then it's just been like downhill. Hutch retires. You have somebody named Anthony Herrera in there. John Sullivan gets a back injury, so you don't have really good center, and it was bad, right, for so long, and now they nailed that draft pick with Darrisaw. They nailed the draft pick with Brian O'Neill. They had a couple of problems that interior, but it's developed really well, and it's been tough to get pressure in the first 2.5 seconds of a play. Now, both Dobbs and Cousins hold on to the ball. So there is pressure coming in because they just love holding on to the ball. But that's not the offensive line's fault at that point, right? That's just those quarterbacks making an active decision. Hey, I want a big play, and I'm going to absorb a little bit of pressure. I'm going to take that on in order to see if that's available. And Dobbs's time to pressure is the longest of any quarterback in the NFL. I think number 2 is like Patrick Mahomes. Number 3 is Jalen Hurts. Like these are good offensive lines that these guys who love to create are taking advantage of and waiting for pressure to arrive. And he's doing that in order to allow big plays to open up. And so that's kind of what you get out of an offensive line like this.
Excellent analysis. Over on the defense, the 2 sack leaders, Danielle Hunter and DJ Wonnum, and please correct me if I've mispronounced any of those names, 12 and 6 sacks respectively. Now, this defense is very, as you've said, very creative with their exotic blitzing. The Bears got a really good dose of that, as you mentioned again earlier in the show. Do you expect Flores to dial up the blitzes right from the start yet again against the Chicago Bears offensive line and Justin Fields, who has this same problem of holding on to the ball too long, and he has absorbed a lot of hits in his career with the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I think Fields ranks number 1 in both time to throw and total time in pocket. So I would expect that. And Hunter, I mean, he's among the sack leaders. I think Myles Garrett passed him pretty recently, but he's among the sack leaders. He's among the pressure leaders. And I don't want to dog somebody like Hunter, who is a really fantastic player, but I wouldn't put him in that category of someone like Myles Garrett or TJ Watt or anything like that. His time to pressure is actually fairly long. He's a very, very good player, right? I'm just, to the context is he's outside of elite. But with somebody like Fields, who does hold on to the ball a long time, that's not a huge concern to me. I think that I believe Hunter's gotten a sack in every game so far this year. Maybe he's missed 1 or 2 games where he hasn't had a sack, but that's my memory, is that he's gotten a sack in every single game. And I don't think this is going to be any different, right? I think that he's going to find ways to get pressure and get some sacks. DJ Wonnum's an interesting case. Almost all of his pressures and sacks come unblocked. He's not a remarkable player to me, but that said, if you take a look at who he's played well against, it's almost entirely the Bears. I think if you look at his best games by pressure total, the top 3 are all the Bears. For whatever reason, the Bears just don't want to block him, and he's more than happy to take advantage of that. And if that continues, he'll probably have another sack. I mean, that's just kind of what works for him. He's not like this wonderful player. I mean, they brought in Marcus Davenport, who's injured, I think, for the 2nd time this season. They brought in Marcus Davenport because they didn't really trust Wonnum as a starter, and now he's been forced to start. He's playing better football than I'm used to seeing him play. He's actually beating decent tackles in order to get some pressures. Not all the time, not consistently, but he's doing it this year as opposed to previous years. But for the Vikings, the primary formula is, like you mentioned, this blitzing. And sometimes they don't always blitz. I mean, I think last week they blitzed at like 35%. It was their season low blitz percentage, which 35% is above league average. Like, so a season low for the Vikings is still more than most teams. The amount that they blitz total is wild, and they don't just blitz with 5, they often blitz with 6. And so they kind of tend to overwhelm protections. The pressure rate isn't that great, and that's because they're forcing quarterbacks to get rid of the ball faster than those quarterbacks typically are used to. The Vikings, I believe, have the fastest time to throw against in the NFL. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what Justin Fields does with that. Again, the Vikings blitzed Fields a lot in that first matchup. Fields has since then been a lot better against the blitz. And he's been getting rid of the ball quicker, specifically in blitzing situations, since that matchup. So I'm kind of curious to see how that evolves. But the Vikings also, instead of rushing 4, will rush 3 and complicate looks by having 8 in coverage, right? And that screws up a lot of quarterbacks too. And so they rarely rush 4. It's like 6 or 3 is like kind of what they do. And that really makes things very confusing for a lot of quarterbacks, even quarterbacks who've had a lot of time in the league. And so you might not see, Hunter get the initial pressure. He might get a cleanup sack because Harrison Smith is the one who blitzed, or Josh Metellus has been the one who blitzed. And sometimes it can be like Ivan Pace is this guy from Cincinnati, this rookie undrafted free agent who is a blitzing linebacker. I mean, he's like 5'10", 215 pounds, and he's this remarkable spark plug. And he's not great in coverage or anything like that, like you'd expect an undersized linebacker to be. He's a really good blitzer, and it's a perfect fit for that. What that Vikings defense does, they put a lot of defensive backs on the field. A lot of times it's 6 defensive backs, 3 safeties, 3 corners. And they like to mix up a lot of these looks. They like to put speed on the field. They like to confuse what quarterbacks are looking at. They know kind of what the quarterback run read is and read option, and they try to confuse that with a bunch of scrapes and stuff like that. So it is designed to be chaos. And the thing that strikes me is that very often you only have 4 in coverage, 5 in coverage, and they still don't give up explosives in the passing game. And that to me is really impressive. It's a testament to how good of a defensive coordinator that Brian Flores is. Because again, the talent level is not like insane to me. Byron Murphy is having an okay season. They've had to rely on either a Caleb Evans or Andrew Booth, who are not that great at corner. I think a Caleb Evans could be a pretty good number 2 in the long run. They've a rookie at nickel. They're playing 3 safeties. Your third safety and 3 safety package is typically not that good. Josh Metellus is having a really good season, but it's just they don't have really good linebackers, especially with Jordan Hicks injured for the year. Their defensive interior doesn't create pressure, and somehow it still all just kind of works.
You know, you're talking about DJ Wonnum and his blitzing sacks come against the Chicago Bears on the very first game of that of the game at Soldier Field. There was a blitz, and Justin Fields gets up to the line of scrimmage and calls the blocking coverage to move to the right, and here comes DJ as soon as he calls hike, unblocked, and he sacks Justin Fields. In the press conference, the offensive coordinator said Fields did everything right. He called the right made the right adjustment with the offensive line, but he was supposed to drift to his right and then hit the short route on the right. He was supposed to, in other words, move a step or 2 away from DJ. Instead, he didn't like the throw, and then he looked back over the middle as if he would have had time, and he should have realized that DJ Wonnum was coming in unblocked, because that's the adjustment that he made. So that's been part of my frustration with our star quarterback, Justin Fields. He was billed as a quarterback who doesn't make the same mistake twice. Unfortunately, he's made those mistakes over and over again. What, from your vantage point, tell me what you think about Justin Fields.
Man, if you'd asked me that at the beginning of the season, I would have been like, things were looking up. He finished last year pretty solid. He tends to see things correctly, but not in enough time. You'll be late on a throw that's the correct throw or something like that. And this year, I haven't seen much in terms of progression. Obviously, the last 2 weeks have been a lot different than most of the year. And, I want to give credit to that. But the problem is these quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks that have a great rushing floor, that have remarkable legs, it's really tough to tell when they're just having a good 2-3 game stretch and when they've genuinely improved. I mean, I've seen a lot of really great athletic quarterbacks have these small pockets of just like really excellent play, and then the rest of it just hasn't worked out. Vikings examples include like Tavares Jackson had this amazing game against the Arizona Cardinals, or Joe Webb, who had a great 2-game stretch, right, for the Vikings in 2010, 2011. But sometimes it is genuine improvement. It's really difficult to tell. For me, I think that, the fact that he played a little bit faster the past couple of games, I'm not going to say that the Lions defense is a joke or anything like that, but it is worth pointing out the Chargers defense. I'm talking about Jordan Love now. Sorry, I screwed myself up a little bit.
That's okay.
But yeah, I don't want to say that like the defenses they've been going up have been like a joke or anything like that. But I do want to say that when you account for a new wrinkle in a new quarterback's game, suddenly the rest of their game can kind of shut down. So as somebody gets a little bit better at saying, "Oh, I'm now better at moving off my first to my second read," as soon as defenses kind of adjust and say, "Oh, okay, now he's not holding onto the ball forever," they can complicate what that second read looks like, maybe with like a zone blitz and dropping a defensive lineman. And now the thing that they were good at before that adjustment is gone too. Right. And so it can be kind of difficult for quarterbacks to continue to adjust as new elements of their game pop in and pop out. For now, I remain skeptical of Justin Fields. And I think that I want to be careful because the Vikings have been demolished by running quarterbacks over the years. It's like they've been a highlight reel for a lot of these running quarterbacks. You see them on every Mike Vick, Steve Young highlight reel for the in perpetuity. But I do want to say I'm worried about the ball placement. I'm worried about his reaction to new or interesting looks. Now he'll be going up against the Vikings defense a second time, so it is going to be a little bit different. But I do think that there is something to be said about. I don't know if it's there. I think he's going to need to prove it to me over the next couple of games before I can say, hey, it's there.
Zach Sullivan, I think, expresses the frustration of many Bears fans. He says, pre-snap, audibles, footwork, climbing the pocket, decision-making are all still questionable after 3 years working on them. Huge amount of talent and potential, frustrating results. You know, he's got, Fields has these last 6 games of the season to prove that to Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, that he is the number one quarterback, should be, kept on the roster and signed to a big contract. But the Bears could potentially have the number 1 overall pick. They own the Panthers pick, and that's the number 1 pick if the draft were held today. What do you think about this quarterback crop coming out in this upcoming draft? Are you a fan of any one particular quarterback?
I think it's a pretty strong draft overall. I think that as far as number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks go, it's not quite up to the level of some of the great number 1, number 2s. I don't want to even compare it to like Luck and RG3. That was astounding, right? But even if you take a look at some of the 1s and 2s we've seen come out since then, I would say this is closer to Carson Wentz, Jared Goff than it is, like Trevor Lawrence and whoever, right? Like I think that I like Caleb Williams a lot. I like Dre May a lot. I just kind of wish we were talking about them as like mid first rounders as opposed to these outstanding definite number 1, guys. I think that there's a lot of holes in their game that you didn't see for somebody like a Trevor Lawrence, right? That said, I think that the prospect potential, right? If you were to figure out kind of what are all of the possibilities for Caleb Williams, what are all the possibilities of Drake May, and then I'm not even talking about like Michael Penix and Bo Nix and this really astounding second tier that we just don't tend to see. What are all the possibilities for these top 2 guys? I think that is a more optimistic set of possibilities than with like Justin Fields, right? I think that you're more likely to see star or even superstar potential out of those 2 than you are for Justin Fields. And I think that's the way you have to make these decisions because you're not always going to have like the number 1, number 2 pick or anything like that, or to have 2 picks in the first round of the draft. And so that's just kind of, the cards that you're dealt. And it's not like you're in a bad spot. It's not like the 2013 draft where the only reason EJ Manuel even went in the first round is because the Bills general manager wanted to leave, a first round quarterback, even if they didn't grade him that way, a first round quarterback to the next group of people. It's nothing like that. This is a good quarterback class. It's just, I don't want to say it's as good as like, the top that we've ever seen, right? I think it's closer to, 2018 is actually not a bad comparison, where, the top was whatever. The middle turned out to be much better than we ever thought possible, right? But from a prospect perspective, we're closer to like, oh, these are like Lamar Jackson's, Patrick Mahomes. Again, outcomes great, but as prospects, that's kind of where I'm at. And it's, there's a lot of that, right? Where it's like, I don't know if Josh Allen's going to turn out. He did. I don't know if he's going to turn out. So I don't know if I want to spend like a number 1 pick on this guy. There's a lot of those guys in this draft, and those guys can absolutely turn into MVP guys. But as prospects, it's just like, hey, one of these could be Baker, right? Like it's just that's kind of where I'm at. I like a lot of the potential here. I don't want to nail somebody as an Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping and praying that Justin Fields really turns it on these last several games and makes a convincing case to be the Bears franchise quarterback, because then we can use those top picks on a Marvin Harrison, on a top pass rusher, and fill some of these other holes and expedite this rebuilding process that has become so painful to us Bears fans. Arif, you've been fantastic. Tell people where they can find your work, and I'm going to put up the Substack information on the screen right now.
Yeah, so like you can see on the screen, you can find my work at wideleftpost.substack.com. I just call it Wide Left. Or you can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Arif Hasan NFL, ARIFHASAN NFL. And I think most other socials I'm like Arif or Arif M Hassan or whatever. But people haven't migrated over to Threads or Blue Sky or anything like that, so I'm just going to stick with that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Pro Football Network, I see that under your name. Do you do writing for them as well?
No. Sorry, I just haven't updated my Chiron.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on me.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, but no, I did work for them over a year. I've produced a lot of great work with them, but not anymore.
Yeah, well, I always enjoy reading your material and listening to you when you're a guest on our show. Are you doing any podcast work?
Yeah. I had to suspend the podcast this past week just because of COVID, but you could find my work at the Norse Code podcast, which is in that SB Nation family of podcasts, or I'm also in the Locked On network where I do stuff with Minnesota Football Party, just inside the Locked On Vikings kind of category. So those are the two podcasts I do.
Hey, before I let you go, I'd like you to answer a couple of questions that came your way.
100%, yeah.
Skylark asks, who is the Vikings' best offensive lineman?
Yeah, I'd say it's Christian Darrisaw. I think that he's doing a really great job doing everything that's asked of him. He's great in short and long sets in passing situations. He's a really phenomenal zone run blocker, which I didn't expect after his rookie year. He could do basically anything that the Vikings ask him to do, and he could do it really well. And it's nice to not just have to say Brian O'Neill. The fact that there's somebody better on that offensive line than Brian O'Neill, who is a really outstanding player, I think says a lot about how much this O-line has improved.
Yeah, and then Taurine wants to know about can Fields and Getsy counter Flores' blitzes. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you have seen in terms of nullifying these exotic blitzes? Is there a formula that you've seen perhaps some teams utilize and have had some success? And hopefully we're not going to see Fields battered around, from Chicago's standpoint anyway. We don't want to see that. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so most teams try to throw out of the blitzes with like screens and wide receiver passes behind the line of scrimmage. And the Vikings have been very good about making sure that the corners that they deploy are very physical and like tackling or good at tackling. Caleb Evans, for example, had to work entirely in his tackling with the Vikings, and it's paid off. They've done a very good job shutting down a lot of those screens. And so, obviously the 49ers got a couple of the screens in, which it's the 49ers. That's the thing that they're amazing at. So I'm not shocked. And the Broncos got a couple of good screens in as well. It's one reason I think that offense ended up taking off a little bit. But that's been primarily it. Teams have tried to throw hot, where they have, a slot receiver or a tight end run, alter their route in response to a blitz. But the Vikings have been very good at identifying who the hot read is going to be and sneaking someone underneath that. So it's been tough to beat the blitz. Obviously, that's why the Vikings have been doing so well on defense. But those are the two primary methods. I would say you're going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage, and it's hard to get open deep. But I would try explosives. The screens are just not working. I would try one-on-one. Hey, my guy's better than your. I mean, Byron Murphy and Caleb Evans are like fine. I would take DJ Moore against one of them. I think that's the approach, but not a lot of teams have done that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. All right, Arif, we'll let you go, and I really appreciate your time and the short notice that you responded and decided to come on with us. Really, really appreciate it. Are you going down to Senior Bowl at all in February or January? That is, I guess.
Yeah, I'd love to. I still got to figure out, now that I'm running my own Substack, I got to figure out all my own finances and stuff like that. But, no one's telling me I can't. So hopefully I'll be down there.
All right. I hope to see you down there. And again, thanks again very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. All right. I'm going to stick around just a little while longer. And Mike, I apologize. I think you offered a question. Actually, it was more Bears related. That's why I saved it. My question, do you honestly think if Flus and Getsy's jobs are in jeopardy, that they would start 6-26 Fields over 2-2 Bagent when Bagent runs the scheme better and manages the team more efficiently? Here's my thought on this, Mike. Right now, Tyson Bagent is not ready to be a number one quarterback. And so you would have to say, we don't care about our jobs. Eberflus and Getsy don't care about our jobs because we know that as more and more film becomes available on Bagent, that they're going to figure him out. It's just too early in the process to turn over the reins to somebody like Tyson Bagent, and there's no guarantee at all that he's going to be a number one quarterback. Yes, he does run the scheme better in terms of getting rid of the ball quickly, but Justin Fields is far and away the better quarterback, more explosive quarterback. He may not be as proficient at certain things that Tyson Bagent is, for instance, getting rid of the ball quickly, but his explosiveness as a runner and what he can do with the long pass attempts. People are complaining about the 169 yards passing against the Detroit Lions. Why that lowly sum? Well, factor in the dropped passes. Factor in Tyler Scott dropping that pass, which would have been anywhere between a 40 and I think 60-yard gain. And so now his passing stats would have been in the mid 200s. So I like Tyson Bagent. I think that what I'm hoping for most of all is that the Bears are comfortable bringing back Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent as the 1 and 2 quarterback, but it's up to Fields. Fields has these 6 games to audition, and he's got to prove that he can command this offense or ad-lib it, take it over. Say, in those famous words of Jay Cutler to Mike Martz, fuck you. Tell Mike Martz I said fuck you, and just take over the offense, even if it means him being publicly benched because he's not listening to his offensive coordinator. He has to take control. He's the man. He can get things done his way, and he should be every day lobbying to Getsy. This is what I do best. This is what I do best. And apparently Getsy might be listening because he did change the game plan dramatically to suit Fields' abilities against Detroit, and he had a sensational game that day. So hopefully more of that. So I hope that answers your question, Mike. I'm sure it's not going to convince you. Evie asked this question: any chance of D'Onta Foreman being in only on third downs? I got a feeling they're going to give him a rest, Evie. I think that he's such a physical runner. I think he's quite banged up, and that they wouldn't mind getting a longer look at Khalil Herbert and Rashawn Johnson. And I also think that the Luke Getsy formula for winning tonight is going to be passing a little bit more than running. So we'll see that. Swiss Sports Network says Foreman is inactive, Evie. So there it is. We know now that Foreman will not be playing at all. D. Levige, I can't pronounce your name. Levine. Fields is our quarterback. That's it. We need to build a defense that can stop a 3rd and long, and we'd have 5. It's interesting because I posted a couple of things about the quarterback on X over the last few days, and people were, coming back at me, and it was just an informational graphic. People were coming back at me and saying, Justin Fields, there's nothing wrong with him. We just need to fix our defense. It's the defense that's given up leads and so forth. And there's a lot of truth to that. This defense still needs a major playmaker, and that's why I'm hoping we don't have to spend our draft capital on a quarterback this upcoming season, so that we can get Marvin Harrison, who will be an electrifying wide receiver, and he and DJ Moore are going to make any quarterback look good, and they'll take a quarterback like Justin Fields and make him look great because he's already good. But the key thing is also picking up a pass rusher to be opposite Montez Sweat. And there's some good ones that will be in the middle of the first round. So that way, perhaps if the Bears do own the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th draft pick, they could potentially trade down, add some more draft assets, pick up a 2nd rounder, which they do not have now, and then pick up a pass rusher like the kid from UCLA. Now, a lot of people have him top 5, but a lot's going to depend on his medicals. He might drop down to 10 or 15. We'll see. We'll talk more about that as time goes on. C Sharp asks, Aldo, do you believe that a decision on JF1 will come down to the last 6 games? My take is that Poles has seen enough upside talent to know to build around him with all that draft capital. That's a great question, C Sharp. I got a feeling that they still want more data. They still want more tape on Fields. My hope is that Ryan Poles is realizing right now that the mistake the number one mistake he made was in bringing Matt Eberflus with an inexperienced offensive coordinator, somebody who has never had experience working with such an athletic quarterback as Justin Fields. I like Luke Getsy. I like him. I actually think that, I love listening to his press conferences. I think he's smart. I just think it's a square peg and a round, whatever that cliche is. I don't think he should be the quarterback coach or the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears with Justin Fields. I think that there are other guys better suited for that who will rely on his athletic skills more and do some more max protect looks so that Justin Fields can go downfield more often, which is something that he's quite proficient at. You saw the perfect pass to Tyler Scott. You saw another great pass to DJ Moore, all for explosive touchdowns against Detroit. He did miss one, but he made the proper adjustments. And I think we need to see more of those explosive play attempts for Justin Fields. But to your question there, I do believe that Ryan Poles needs some more data. And that brings us to the other interesting topic that has been talked a lot about recently is that reportedly Kevin Warren has gone to the Chicago Bears chairman, George McCaskey, and says, I want more power. I want to be able to make football decisions. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's been any actual quotes on that or anyone with and perhaps if somebody knows of an actual quote that makes that a totally legitimate statement. But I do think that Kevin Warren wants to put his hands on some of the football decisions. And I would not be totally shocked if he did fire Ryan Poles and the entire coaching staff and said, all right, George is giving me the opportunity because I'm going to be here for a while, people. I'm going to build this stadium, and I'm also going to build a winning football team. And I'm going to do so by hiring this guy as the general manager and this guy as the head coach, blah, blah, blah. I can see that happening, but if Kevin Warren is not going to take control, then Ryan Poles has to take control and realize that he has made some mistakes with the coaching hires, and he needs to clean house and bring in a new crew, a crew that really, really does work to the strengths of the players. It's just not lip service. We heard the lip service from Matt Nagy when he was coaching Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, and we've heard it now with Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus. They're really not playing up to the strengths of the quarterback and some of the other players on this roster. All right, let's see what else we have. Daniel, okay. Yeah, I think we got all of our questions. Let's see what else has come in lately. Ravi says 161 yards passing in 3 years doesn't cut it in the NFL. You're absolutely right, Ravi. You're absolutely right. That's not going to cut it. So let's look at it, from a macro level. What have been his numbers since DJ Moore joined the team? You saw the 4-touchdown game against Washington. Can that become more of the norm? Not saying that he's going to throw 4 touchdown passes to DJ Moore every game, but that he really utilizes DJ Moore as his main weapon. On social media, there's been a big debate on whether Justin Fields did the wrong thing by throwing the ball to Tyler Scott when all we needed was to move the chains late in that Detroit Lions game. Tyler, unfortunately, lost the ball and did not come up with the catch. It would have been a huge game-winning play. There's no doubt about it. But he could have gone to DJ Moore, who was running a crossing pattern. The Lions were running a robber defensive scheme, so the safety came down to guard DJ Moore, but he could have completed that pass to DJ Moore and could have perhaps picked up the 2 to 3 yards that he needed to get the first down, because he would have caught it 2 or 3 yards short of the first down. So there was a big debate about that. I personally think that he did the right thing. And it's unfortunate that Chase Claypool didn't work out, because he's the one that should have been running that route, and he's the one that would have made the catch, and he's the one that would have been the hero. But instead, he's an asshole for being, such an immature jerk. So my whole point here is that fourth quarter is a huge problem for the Chicago Bears as a whole. Kevin Fishbane wrote about this in The Athletic. Justin has to take accountability for his faults in the fourth quarter. He has got to start leading fourth quarter comebacks, even when the chips are against them, even when there's mistakes made by other players. That's what a franchise quarterback is, that he can overcome some of these things. And so that's what I'm hoping. I really, if I could write the script for today's game, it'll be a moderately scored game, but that in the fourth quarter, the Bears are tied and Justin Fields is going to lead them downfield for the game-winning touchdown, or at the very least, a field goal. I want him to prove to myself and to all of the Bears fans out there that he can become a fourth quarter comeback and overcome the blitzing and the exotic blitzes and the different looks and the unscripted things that the defense is going to throw at his face. That's important to see, and I'd love to start seeing it tonight, although I do think we got a glimpse of it a little bit against the Detroit Lions because he did play really well for 3 quarters. What else have we got here? Tyler Scott needs more experience. People say he's the successor to Mooney if Mooney leaves, but he hasn't proven it yet. You're absolutely right. That's Larry T on that comment. Larry, I think he's been, the Bears didn't expect him to see that many snaps this season. They didn't expect the whole Chase Claypool thing. They didn't expect Tyler would be seeing snaps, the third wide receiver. And it's unfortunate that Equanimeous St. Brown hasn't become a more reliable pass catcher to get more snaps. This is a guy who was a valuable part of Luke Getsy's offense because he's a really good blocking wide receiver. Well, I'd love to see him get more snaps, and I'd like to see him secure the ball when he has made catches. He, not this season, but in his prior 2 seasons with the Bears, prior season with the Bears, he had some trouble holding on to big catches. So that's a problem. John Hammer says, I just want a Bears team that doesn't have me hoping they would lose to end the mess faster since Lovey hasn't been the case at certain points in recent years. You're right, John. I totally agree with you, but I hope that all Bears fans tonight while we're watching this game, that we're going to be rooting for the team to win. This is about wins. We root for the Panthers to lose. And hopefully with what's the name of the guy that took over, the former special teams coordinator for the Bears during the double doink year? He's taken over. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I know somebody's going to help me out in the chat room. He's taken over for the Panthers because Frank Reich was fired today, and so now the former Bears, Tabor, thank you, John. Tabor has taken over as head coach. Wouldn't it be just like a kick to the nuts that Tabor now takes his team on a winning streak and we lose the number 1 overall pick because of Chris Tabor, the former special teams coach, who I hated when he was special teams coach with the Bears, because the Bears on special teams were constantly making mistakes. Some of the players didn't know certain rules that the special teams coordinator should be making sure that those Bears players know. They were just reckless at times. And so it wouldn't be like just typical for us Bears fans to see Tabor come back and haunt the Bears by winning some games and getting us out of that number 1 overall pick. That would be the absolute worst thing that I can imagine right now. So, he needs Cody Park. Yeah, hopefully they sign Cody Park and he misses every field goal. They got Eddie Pinheiro now. But I forgot what my train of thought was, but I just want, I got it. I just want all of us Bears fans to really root for victory. Let's end the season strong with a series of victories. Let's, hope and pray that Justin Fields settles this quarterback question. Absolutely no controversy, no debate. He is our number 1 quarterback because he's proven it to close the 2023 season, and we can go into camp having Marvin Harrison on the roster and a bunch of other first-round caliber picks because we trade that second-round pick and add a plethora of talent. Did I use the word right there? Plethora? Man, I love trying to figure out these names, but I'm such an idiot, Anyway, Demondisi, I think, says that would be a tragedy, although, yeah, it would be a tragedy. And Ghost of the Judah tribe. I've heard about you, Ghost. You go around bashing Justin Fields, and you've done it again. Busting Fields, another excuse-filled game. Watch how the coaches get the blame. You know what? I think the coaches have to be accountable for a lot of what's going on. Again, Kevin Fishbane wrote really a great article. If you're a subscriber to The Athletic, check it out. He wrote about the Bears' second half, particularly fourth quarter collapses. And obviously some of it is on Justin Fields, but this is also on the defense and the team and as a whole, the coaching staff, some of the play calling, some of the schematics that they've had. This is a team that has not learned how to win. So I'll ask everyone a question. Particularly those of you like Ghost of Judah, do you think that if Andy Reid and his staff with Matt Nagy were coaching the Chicago Bears, that they would have this 3-win season so far? Absolutely not. Let's go with the Vikings coaching staff, Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. Do you think that the Bears would have just 3 wins? Absolutely not. They would have more wins. These are better coaches. They know how to coach to their personnel. They're smarter. They're strategic. They have experience. The fact that we brought in a offensive coordinator who has never called plays in the NFL before, along with a head coach who's never had head coaching experience, is malpractice. Blame it on Poles or blame it on George McCaskey if he forced Eberflus on the head coach, or excuse me, on Ryan Poles. That's malpractice. So, this coaching staff has to accept some of the blame. I try not to cast blame on people. I like to wait till the season's over and then calmly look at things, but that's past, man. And when you're 6-26 as a head coach, that means you're bad, because we can understand the win-loss record from last season because it was a total teardown. You got rid of Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn and a number of other players, and Roquan Smith. I can understand that. But there's no reason why this team should have come out game 1 against the Green Bay Packers and looked like a dog, and some of these other losses that can be fairly placed on coaching decisions and just coaching style, in my opinion. Yeah, so if they have no answers, indeed, drop that mic. All right, I think I've oh, look at Skylark is talking about Xavier Legette. He looks like a beast at wide receiver. Yeah, there's one thing about this class of wide receivers. There are some good ones, and there are some, in the first round, we're going to see Marvin Harrison, maybe the first overall pick. If not the first, he'll definitely be probably in the top 3. I think you can bet on that top 3. Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, some athletic freaks that. So even if the Bears don't get Marvin Harrison with that first pick, because it'll have to be the first pick that they have in the draft. Even if they don't get Harrison, they might be able to land a really good wide receiver. And wouldn't it be great if DJ Moore was lined up opposite one of these great rookie receivers and he mentors him and tutors him, and Justin Fields can rely on him as another weapon to have. That's the other thing I want to see about Justin Fields. I want to see him spray the ball around more. Now, DJ Moore is his number 1 wide receiver. So on key downs, he's got to be looking for DJ Moore and trust DJ Moore. But I don't want him to focus only on DJ Moore, where he starts to attract, double coverage, and Justin is forcing the ball in there. He's got to spray that ball around. Cole Kmet, I'm hoping he gets 6 catches and about 75 yards and a touchdown. DJ Moore, 9 catches, 115 yards and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney, his best game of the year, have it tonight, 85, 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Let's see those kind of numbers. And of course, the main guy behind that would be Justin Fields. All right, everybody. Thanks very much, Swifty and Ravi and J2K and Skylark and all of the new faces, new names that I'm seeing on here. Thank you all for spending some time with me here. We've gone an hour. Now, I will be back at halftime with Danny Shimon to give you an evaluation of how the Bears played in the first half. And then immediately after the game, Danny and I will be back, and we'll talk at length about the Bears' performance, and we'll also carry at least head coach Matt at Eberflus's press conference and maybe Justin Fields as well. So stick with us here at the Barroom Network. And the best way to stay on top of everything is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Barroom Network, and hit the alerts and all that stuff. And that's it. Thank you all very much. We'll see you hopefully at halftime today. Bye-bye. Bears 35, Vikings 18.